Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon.
I was peeling potatoes when Amanda called and said, "If you want to come to Thanksgiving, you can wash the dishes." Then she hung up. That was the moment something inside me cracked. My thumb was still wet with starch, and the knife rested on the counter, next to half a peeled Yukon Gold. I hadn't even rinsed it off. The house was quiet, just me and Ron. The TV was on low in background, but even that sound felt far away now. Her words weren't just rude. They were deliberate, sharp, and they landed like a slap across my face. It was the first time she said it out loud, but it wasn't the first time she'd made me feel small. It was a pattern, one I had trained myself to ignore. Amanda knew exactly what she was doing. There was no misunderstanding. She wasn't joking. She wasn't tired. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wanted me to know where I stood outside. I stood in place, still gripping the phone, my ears ringing. She hadn't even waited for a response, not even a fake pleasantry, just a demand like I was the maid and she needed me to clock in. I wasn't Amanda's mother-in-law. I was a chore she didn't want to do. Ron, who was seated in his recliner in the living room, looked over. He'd heard her voice. He always recognized her tone. He didn't say anything at first, just turned off the TV and waited. We had been married for over 35 years. He knew when something changed in me. "Maybe it's time we stopped being the first to call," he finally said. And just like that, everything we had been swallowing for years sat in the middle of the room. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I typed one word back to her. Enjoy. Simple, cold, final. That word held back years of sadness. Behind it was a quiet storm of things I had never said. All the moments I had pushed aside. All the times I told myself to rise above, to stay kind, to keep the peace. Amanda never wanted me around. She tolerated me. On good days, she was distant. On bad ones, she was condescending. When I brought a homemade casserole, she would give me a tight smile and say, "We already have too much food, but thanks anyway." When I offered to babysit, she replied, "Thanks, but they already have a rhythm. I don't want to confuse them." I remembered how I once brought hand-sewn holiday pajamas for the kids. She smiled and said, "Oh, Target had a great sale this year, but the effort is sweet." Each word chipped away at something inside me, my place, my worth. Amanda made me feel like a backup plan, an afterthought. Not someone to love or include, but someone to manage. I'd sit in their living room and she'd talk over me, turn her back to me. If I asked a question, she'd give clipped answers. If I told a story, she'd redirect the conversation. Once she asked me to bring a pie to a birthday dinner. I brought my best apple pie. I watched her slice it, taste it, and quietly slide it into the fridge without comment. Later, she served store-bought cake instead. When the kids were younger, I offered to take them to the park. She told me maybe when they're older and can handle different personalities. She never raised her voice, never swore, never screamed. But she made it clear, "You are not one of us. You are a visitor. You are not needed." And I took it every time. I told myself it was okay, that things would get better, that she didn't mean it that way, but she did. I remembered the Christmas when I brought everyone handmade scarves. I had spent weeks knitting them. Amanda held hers up, smiled politely, and said, "It's thoughtful. We already have nicer ones, but I'm sure the kids can use them for play." Then she handed me a trash bag filled with wrapping paper and said, "Here, I know you like to clean." Everyone laughed. Even Ron chuckled awkwardly. I laughed too, just to survive the moment. But that laugh carved a deep scar. I left early that night, and still I went back again and again because I believed that family meant showing up, even when you felt invisible. I helped clean up her kitchen while she sat on her phone. I folded laundry while she chatted with friends. I offered help and got silence in return. I remember calling her once just to say hello. She answered and said, "Can you text?" "I'm busy." Busy, but not too busy to post online later about her perfect day with family. I was never part of that definition. So, when she said, "If you want to come to Thanksgiving, you can wash the dishes." She didn't break me. She revealed the truth, a truth I had been avoiding for too long. Ron stood up and walked into the kitchen. He looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, like he had watched this for years and was waiting for me to admit it. "What if we just disappeared for the holidays?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "Switzerland, that villa you showed me with the glass walls, the view of the mountains." I blinked. He remembered. I had shown him that villa last spring, dreaming about going one day. I never brought it up again because we always had commitments, dinners, kids, expectations. But what if we didn't? What if for once we put ourselves first? We stood there in the kitchen. I looked out the window. The sky was gray. The leaves were gone. Everything felt cold except that idea. That evening, we sat together with an open laptop. We booked a villa, a week in Europe in the mountains. Just us. No announcements, no apologies, no explanations. We didn't need permission. We left, and with every mile between us and Amanda's kitchen, I felt something return. My breath, my spine, my peace. Amanda still thought she was in control. She thought I stayed quiet because I was weak, because I needed her approval. She didn't realize I was done. Done being treated like a burden. Done trying to earn a seat at a table I had already built. This wasn't revenge. It was freedom. In the stillness of that snowy villa, I found something better than tradition. I found myself. It snowed the morning we arrived. Thick, silent flakes drifting across the road as the cab carried us through winding hills. The villa appeared like something from a dream. Glass windows that reached up to the ceiling, soft light glowing from inside, smoke curling from the chimney. Ron leaned forward to get a better view, his breath fogging the window. We didn't speak much during the drive. There was nothing to say, really. Everything had already been said in our silence, in the way we packed our bags without a word, and how we left no note behind. Amanda hadn't followed up. No text, no call, no apology. Of course not. Her silence wasn't forgetfulness. It was punishment. She expected me to reach out again, to ask what I did wrong, to beg for a seat at the table I paid for. I wasn't going to do that anymore. The front door opened with a soft creak, and warmth hit us like a blanket. The cabin smelled like pine wood and cinnamon. I dropped my bag and stood there for a moment, letting it all soak in. Ron put a hand on my back, just a gentle touch. I looked at him and nodded. We were here. Really here. We made coffee first, sat down by the fire, and just watched the snow. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was comforting. After so many years of feeling like we were always in someone else's way, it felt like we were finally in our own place. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop, not to check in, not to look at photos from Amanda's holiday spread, just to write for myself. I started listing the things I'd done for them. Over the years, not because I wanted to tally favors, but because I needed to face it all. I wrote, canceled our anniversary trip to babysit when Amanda forgot she had a conference, paid off their second car, loaned quietly when Matthew said they were stressed, bought their first washer and dryer because Amanda said we're drowning in laundry and it would mean the world, sewed all the curtains in their first home, cleaned their kitchen after every dinner, even when my knees ached, kept every grandkid's artwork they threw away, showed up early, stayed late, was always kind even when Amanda was cold. I stared at that list for a long time. None of it was noticed. None of it changed the way Amanda saw me. To her, I was always one step away from being a bother, a person to call when something needed fixing, feeding, folding, and then dismissed until needed again. Even the way she said things stuck with me. How she managed to make polite words sting, like the time she said, "You're always so eager to help." It's sweet, but she said it in that tone that made it clear I was desperate, like I needed to be useful to matter. I thought of how she'd lean over to Matthew during dinners, whisper something, And then he'd look at me with this strange mix of guilt and distance, like he was embarrassed to be my son. The worst part was that I believed her. I started shrinking myself, talking less, offering less, and even then, she found ways to cut deeper. You didn't bring anything today? That's okay. The kids don't really eat your casseroles. Oh, we started a new tradition. Just the four of us. You understand, right? I always nodded, always smiled, always said, of course. But I didn't understand. I sat on the sofa in the villa staring at the snow. And I let myself feel angry. Really angry. I didn't try to soften it. I didn't excuse her. She had taken my kindness and fed it to her pride. And my son had watched it happen. Thanksgiving morning I put on a red dress. Not for anyone else, for me. Ron wore a navy sweater. We stood by the big glass window, the mountains behind us, and took a photo together. We smiled genuinely softly. I posted the photo with a simple caption. This year we're grateful for peace. No names, no location, nothing sharp, just the truth. I didn't expect the reaction. My phone buzzed. First once, then again and again. By the end of the evening, 78 missed calls. Ron watched me, set the phone down unread. Messages poured in. Why didn't you tell us you were leaving? Was it that hard to come over for dinner? We saved a seat for you. That was petty of you. Petty after everything. That word nearly made me laugh. I didn't reply. Ron didn't either. We poured another glass of wine, clinked our glasses quietly, and watched the fire flicker. Let them squirm, because I was done explaining myself. I was done performing. The next day I took a walk alone. The snow was thick, but not too deep. The trees looked like they were holding their breath. I thought about the version of myself I had become around Amanda, always second-guessing, always editing. I thought about the woman I used to be before I made myself small, and I decided I'm not shrinking anymore. When I got back, Ron was at the kitchen table reading. He looked up and smiled. You okay? Yeah, I said for the first time in a long time. I really am. That night, we danced to a song we both loved from the 70s. No one watched, no one judged, just us. The next morning, I brewed coffee. Before Ron even got out of bed. The snow had stopped. Outside, everything was still. I opened the door for a moment and stood barefoot on the cold floor, looking at the world in white. I thought of all the Christmases I'd cooked through, the Easter I spent setting the table while Amanda took selfies with the ham, the birthdays I planned and paid for just to be told, the kids are too old for parties now. I remembered overhearing her once say to a friend on the phone, she means well, but she's intense. Intense, like love, effort, and showing up were things to be embarrassed about. After breakfast, I sat down again at the laptop and wrote something new. I am allowed to enjoy things without asking. I am not a problem. I am not a favor. I am not a servant. I do not owe anyone my silence. I am allowed to leave. It felt like writing a new constitution. Ron, and I didn't talk much about the calls or texts. He knew. I knew that was enough. In the evening, we played cards and made dinner together. I watched him move around the kitchen, relaxed. He looked 10 years younger. When I told him that, he smiled and said, maybe that's what being listened to feels like. And maybe he was right. We had spent so many years filling everyone else's cup, we hadn't noticed ours was bone dry. But now, here in this villa, with no expectations and no audience, we were remembering who we were, and we liked those people. Amanda could have her cold stares, her tidy little house, and her passive messages. She could keep her control, but she couldn't have me. Not anymore. It was late evening in the villa when I turned off my phone screen and stared out at the snow-covered hills beyond the wide glass windows. The crackling fire nearby filled the room with warmth, but inside I felt cold. Not from the air, but from Amanda's message. That was petty of you. Petty. 5 letters that burned hotter than the fire ever could. She always knew how to twist the knife with the softest tone. I hadn't responded, but the silence inside me had grown louder, heavier. I couldn't sleep. I got up and walked quietly to my travel bag. We'd brought a folder with us, just in case, containing copies of important documents. I reached in and pulled it out, settling onto the wide couch by the window. I didn't start looking for anything specific, but something in me needed proof. Something in me needed to see it on paper. The pattern, the imbalance, the truth. The file held copies of our will, our house deed, some joint financials. I ran my hand across the pages, years of planning, years of hope, and years of giving without being asked, without ever being truly seen. I remembered the call from Matthew, panicked when Amanda had overdrawn their account. I wired $5,000 the same day. He promised to repay us quickly. That was 7 years ago. No repayment, not even a mention. I remembered Amanda standing in our kitchen asking if we'd be willing to co-sign their mortgage. Just for a better rate, she said, her voice sweet as honey. I nodded. Sign the papers. She never brought it up again. Then Christmas. Amanda asked if they could use our house since theirs was under renovation. We did everything. Cleaned, cooked, even bought extra chairs. They came late, brought nothing, and didn't say a word of thanks. I had smiled through it all. I turned another page and found a copy of the birthday card Amanda had given me years ago before their wedding. Thanks for being like a second mom. I stared at it, reading the line over and over. Before the wedding, she had been kind, even affectionate. Then everything changed. Amanda learned she didn't have to impress us anymore. Her tone became colder, sharper. The kindness disappeared, replaced by strategic civility. She had turned motherhood into a transaction. And when I stopped paying, she cut off access. Ron came in from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of tea. He saw the open folder on my lap and sat beside me without a word. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "I just wanted to remember everything we gave," I said. My voice shook. He didn't say anything at first, just sipped his tea. Maybe it's time to start remembering what we deserve. That morning, we sat together at the long wooden table in the villa's sunroom. Ron opened his laptop. I opened mine. We logged into accounts, double-checked documents, and slowly started untangling ourselves. Amanda and Matthew didn't know it, but they were still listed as emergency contacts, still named in parts of the will, still connected to accounts. We changed. Everything quietly, without a word, not out of spite, but for sanity. Ron drafted a message to our lawyer asking to remove them from any powers of attorney and update our final wishes. I updated our beneficiary forms. We even removed the shared access to the storage unit they never used, but insisted we maintain for family heirlooms. They hadn't visited that unit in 4 years. But every time we brought up clearing it out, Amanda would say, "Let's not make a big deal out of things." It was always like that. Her words, her tone, her emails, polite on the surface, but laced with power. "If you're up for helping in the kitchen, we'll set aside a plate for you. We're doing something casual, just close friends and family. Your gifts are always thoughtful, even if the kids don't use them much." I had started to dread messages from her, not because they were openly cruel, but because of how small they made me feel. I remembered a moment after their youngest's dance recital. I had driven 6 hours just to be there, only to stand at the back while Amanda chatted with her friends. Afterward, she looked at me and said, "I didn't expect you to come this far. We already had plans for dinner." She turned away before I could say anything. I cried on the drive back. Ron didn't say much, but he held my hand the entire way. That night, after we finished updating the documents, I walked outside into the snow. The cold hit my face, but I welcomed it. It made me feel real. Then, out of nowhere, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The day my own mother looked at me and said, "Don't expect much. You give too easily." At the time, I thought she was being cruel. Now, I understood she was trying to warn me. Back inside, I picked up my phone and scrolled through Amanda's messages. Not to reopen wounds, but to confirm the pattern. She always made me feel like I was overreacting. Like when I asked if I could host Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She said, "Oh, we already have a rhythm going. You're welcome to bring rolls." Rolls. I had once hosted 40 people by myself, cooked every dish, cleaned for 2 days, made place cards by hand, but now I was assigned rolls. I never said anything. I told myself it was their turn, their family, their table. But it wasn't a passing of the torch. It was an eviction. That night, Evelyn called. She'd seen our photo online. "You looked so alive," she said. "Not just happy alive." I almost cried. That word alive. That's how I felt for the first time in years. I told her about Amanda. The exclusion, the silence, the manipulation dressed as manners. She said, "Some people only love you when you're useful. That's not love." And it stayed with me. Ron and I didn't make a list of revenge. We made a list of peace, 2 new armchairs, a plan to donate what we no longer needed, a folder of updated documents. That night, we lit candles in the villa and made dinner together. Pasta with garlic and herbs. We played soft music. We talked. And when Ron said, "We haven't laughed like this in years," I knew he was right. I hadn't just left behind Amanda's words. I had left behind the weight of pretending I wasn't hurt. I realized I didn't miss them. I missed who I had been before I let them define me. And now, in that villa with snow falling gently outside, I finally felt what I hadn't in years. Freedom. Ron raised his glass to new traditions. I raised mine to freedom. And this time I meant it with every part of my being. It started with silence, not the kind that comes from peace, but the silence that follows an earthquake, the kind that waits to see what's still standing. We had been back from Switzerland for 3 days. No one called. No one visited. No one asked if we'd made it home safely. The house was still as we left it, but something inside it had shifted inside me. Something had shifted, and that was the most dangerous thing. Ron and I moved through the house like we were stepping into a new skin. We cleaned out closets, repainted walls, rearranged furniture, not to distract ourselves, but to take back control. Every box we packed for donation was a choice. No more saving space for people who didn't care if they fit. The photo from Switzerland was still up on my screensaver. Me in the red dress, Ron beside me, champagne in our hands, mountain light behind us. I stared at it like it was a mirror because the woman in that picture wasn't desperate anymore. Then came the notifications. 78 missed calls. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't even listen to the voicemails, but I read the texts. Every single one. "We saved a seat for you. You could have just told us. This wasn't fair to the kids. Petty doesn't look good on you. Amanda." All Amanda. Matthew's messages were shorter, colder. "Why didn't you just say something? You didn't have to disappear." Amanda's mom was really upset. And then finally, the one that stopped me cold. "You've made your point. Hope you're happy." I sat at the kitchen table and stared at that last message. "You've made your point." As if our absence was a stunt. As if our silence was a performance. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply stood up and walked over to the kitchen drawer where we kept the old landline phone, the one no one used anymore. I unplugged it and tucked it in the pantry. Then I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Bank statements, wire transfers, email records, screenshots of messages, photos of the house before and after we funded their renovation. I wasn't collecting revenge. I was collecting proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. Proof that I had been present, generous, giving and willing until the moment I wasn't. Ron joined me at the table. "Are you building a case?" "No," I said. "I'm building boundaries." He didn't say another word, just pulled up his own files. We worked in sync. That evening we met with a notary and updated the last of our legal protections. The house, the retirement, funds, our medical directives, all adjusted. We left nothing open, nothing vague, nothing to be exploited later with tears or guilt. Amanda once told me years ago, it's easier when everything's spelled out, less drama. So I spelled it all out. We even changed our home's security codes, Not because we were afraid, but because we were done assuming they would knock. The next day, Ron found a large cardboard box on our doorstep. No note, no name, just our address scrolled in Amanda's handwriting. Inside, old toys, some framed photos, a few hand-sewn baby clothes I had made for their first child. I stood staring at it, my stomach tight. I didn't need a note. It was clear they were returning me. All the things I had made, all the things I had given, handed back like clutter. Ron stepped forward, reached in, pulled out the smallest onesie I had ever sewn, and gently folded it back into the box. "Let's donate it," he said. "Someone will be grateful." And that was the difference. Amanda didn't return it to hurt me. She returned it because she never understood it had meaning in the first place. A week later, we got a formal email from their lawyer, a draft outlining a new agreement for future boundaries, financial expectations, and family roles. It was cold, businesslike, impersonal. I read it twice and then closed the laptop. There it was, the transaction in writing. They didn't want resolution. They wanted rules, guidelines, a way to manage us like a liability. Ron looked at me. "What do you want to do?" "Nothing," I said. "I want to do nothing." No reply, no signature. We didn't answer the email. We didn't engage. Instead, we sent our own message. Quiet, but impossible to ignore. We closed the joint savings account we had opened for the grandkids' education. We took their photos down from the hallway. We unsubscribed from school newsletters. And finally, we informed our attorney that all estate-related decisions would now include a formal clause. Only those who remain in active, respectful communication may be considered beneficiaries. A clean statement, no names, just principles. That's when Amanda lost control. She called 6 times in one day. When we didn't answer, she left a voicemail, angry, voice shaking. "This is outrageous. After everything we put up with from you, you're punishing the children now." She followed up with an email that read like a lecture. Lines like, "It's one thing to step back, but to erase us is cruel. You're tearing this family apart. You'll regret this when you're alone." Her mother even chimed in, leaving a message on Ron's phone. "I don't know what got into you two, but Amanda's heartbroken. You've gone too far." Then Matthew, his first message since the lawyer's draft. "You always said family was unconditional. Guess that only applies when we're doing what you want." I didn't respond. Not to any of them. They weren't looking for reconciliation. They were reacting to a loss of control. Amanda even posted a rant on social media, a carousel of family photos, all carefully edited to make us look absent, distant, replaced. The caption said, "You give people your whole heart and they walk away, then blame you for not being enough." The comments poured in. Sympathetic friends, clapping emojis, hearts. No one asked what happened. They just took her word for it, but I didn't care. Then I did something I didn't expect from myself. I printed the last photo we took in Switzerland and placed it in a new frame by the fireplace. Just us. No one else. I stood there a while, looking at it. On Christmas Eve, we lit candles in the living room. Just us. No boxes, no fuss, no expectations. I read an old novel I hadn't touched in years. Ron made cocoa. We played a record from when we first met. And in the quiet, I felt something even deeper than freedom. I felt done. Not bitter, not broken, not even sad. Just finished. Amanda would likely say we abandoned them, that we acted selfishly, that we turned our backs. But you can't turn your back on people who already walked away. The only thing I regret now is how long it took me to see it. But I see it now and I won't unsee it again. The first message after the holidays came on January 3rd. It was short from Amanda. "We noticed you didn't send a gift for the kids." No hello, no question about how we were. Just that. Not a hint of reflection. No acknowledgement that we had disappeared for weeks. Just an invoice of absence. I stared at the screen, the words pulsing like a sore spot. It wasn't about the gift. It never had been. It was about control, about expectation, about pretending nothing had changed. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat back in my chair and breathed in the silence. A week later, another message, this time from Matthew. We don't understand what's happening. Amanda is trying to keep things normal, and you're acting like we wronged you. There it was again. That shift in tone, as if I were the one causing chaos. As if the request to wash dishes before being allowed into a family Thanksgiving was nothing. As if the years I'd sacrificed were invisible. I wanted to scream. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote down every moment I could remember where Amanda had dismissed me. When I offered to help decorate the nursery, she said, "We want it modern, not your style." When I baked her favorite pie for her birthday, she said, "I'm trying to avoid sugar, but thanks." When I spent 3 days sewing costumes for the kids' school play, she told another mom it was her idea. When I gave up a cruise Ron and I had saved for so we could help them move houses, she never said thank you, just asked why the boxes weren't labeled better. When I paid off their medical bill after the youngest broke his arm, she called it helpful, but never mentioned it again. I wrote until my wrist hurt. Then I flipped to a new page and wrote, "I'm not asking for recognition, but I won't tolerate revision." The texts kept coming, space days apart, some guilt-laced, others passive-aggressive. "We're trying to include you, but you make it so hard. The kids are asking why Grandma's mad. It's not too late to come to the birthday party if you're done punishing us." Every one of them was a little cut, and every cut made the scar clearer. I showed Ron the latest string of texts. He read them quietly, then said, "It's like they're talking to a version of you they made up." Yes, that was it. They didn't see me. They saw a role, a wallet, a babysitter, a problem when I didn't perform. I started drafting a letter, not to send, just to write it. I am not mad. I am not holding grudge. I am not bitter. But I am done. Done with giving until I'm empty. Done with being erased. Done with pretending your love was ever free of condition. I sat with those words for hours. Then I deleted the letter because they didn't deserve to read my truth. They wouldn't hear it. Then one afternoon in February, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived in the mail, handwritten. It wasn't from Amanda or Matthew. It was from Amanda's sister. "Dear Evelyn, I don't know if this is welcome, but I've been watching everything unfold from the sidelines, and I need to say something. You were always kind to me, always the first to offer help or ask how I was doing when no one else noticed. What Amanda did was cruel, not just Thanksgiving. All of it. I'm sorry I stayed quiet. I don't know if bridges can be repaired, but I do know this. You didn't deserve how you were treated, Claire." I read it twice, 3 times. Not because I needed validation, but because someone finally saw the truth and wrote it down. That night, Ron poured wine, and we sat by the fireplace. I showed him the letter. He read it, smiled gently, and said, "It doesn't change what happened, but it does mean we weren't crazy." And somehow that helped. It didn't fix the pain, but it made the fog lift. A few days later, I was walking through the local bookstore when a little girl, maybe 7, bumped into me. She looked up and said, "Sorry, ma'am." I smiled and said her, "Okay." Her mother rushed over, flustered. She's always running off. "I hope she didn't scare you." "No," I said softly. "She reminded me of something." The woman looked puzzled. "Of what?" "Of how easy it is to forgive a child for bumping into you, and how hard it is to forgive adults for pushing you away." She didn't respond, just nodded awkwardly, but it felt good to say out loud. Later that week, I received one more message from Matthew. No long paragraph, no. Passive remarks, just, "Mom, if you ever want to talk, I'll be here." I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough, but it wasn't nothing. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish him, but because healing takes silence too. And I wasn't ready. We had brunch with old friends the next weekend, laughed more than we had in years. Ron danced with me in the kitchen afterward like we were newlyweds. I looked around our home, peaceful, uncluttered, warm, and I realized something. We hadn't lost a family. We had shed an illusion. That night, I posted something of my own. A photo of Ron and me on a hiking trail, smiling, wind in our hair. The caption, "We may not be everyone's idea of family, but we are each other's home." I didn't check for likes. I didn't care who saw it. It wasn't for them. It was for anyone who ever felt unwanted by the very people they gave everything to. Anyone who ever felt disposable. Anyone who finally said enough. And for the first time in years, I didn't second guess myself. I didn't need permission to be whole. I didn't need an audience to matter. I didn't need their version of me to be real because I was finally my own. And if you've ever felt like you don't belong, you're not alone.
Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icons. Thanks for watching.